everybody, and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Taylor Rockwell, and it's MLS time. We had teenagers making life difficult for Messi, the Rapids washing away the Dynamo, Portland winning a game? What a time to be alive. Plus, the obvious and only problem at Montreal, Marco Donadel, has been sacked. What happens next for CF Montreal, and which other coaches' seats might be getting increasingly warm? Here with me to talk it all out are the voice of Phoenix. It's Joe Lowry. Hello, Joe.
Wow, what a responsibility. I feel like that's a burden that I'm not yet ready to bear. Maybe someday I will be. Just a sprawling city. You know, can I really speak for all of it? Find out,
Yes.
I guess. Okay.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Done deal. That's all I needed.
Well, Joe, would you rather be that or the voice of 10,000 Lakes? It's Geoff Reuter. Hello, Geoff.
It's way cooler.
They don't speak for themselves, so someone's gotta. I'm just picturing Joe doing like every narration Billy May style for any product coming out of Phoenix, right? And he's just in a studio all day, just like
Joe Lowry here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and like going into the weeds about like the quality of this like drain company. This would be great. Way to go, Joe! Congratulations.
I'm into that. I was getting real Lorax vibes from Geoff speaking for 10,000 Lakes. Like, they can't speak for themselves, you know? Somebody's got to step up, do the job, take down that little short, tubby guy. It's gonna go great. You got it.
That's a blonde mustache joke, isn't it?
It's not, because I didn't get that reference, but
one.
I liked it
Yeah.
nonetheless.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's a lot of fish complaints, as I understand, from the 10,000 Lakes. We are here to talk all about the weekend that was in Major League Soccer. To start off, Mr. Lowry, if you would you give us your favorite game from the weekend, please and thank you.
Yeah, my favorite game was Colorado, the game that you referenced earlier, washing away the Houston Dynamo, rushing over them with these Whitewater Rapids in a 6-2 win. Generally speaking, if you score 6 goals on somebody, that's a decent way to get talked about, and so Colorado have accomplished that goal here. This team is probably the surprise team of 2026. I mean, is that a bad take? I don't think that's a bad take. There's a few others that are maybe in general contention for that title. A few other teams I'm surprised by. But the Rapids are playing, number one, probably the most entertaining soccer in all of Major League Soccer. And number two, at times they're playing some of the most effective soccer in the entire league. And we saw some of that in this game. Now, the game was a little bit more open than I think Matt Wells would have preferred. Houston had chances, and Houston in general have had chances this year. But the Rapids got up early. They were effective with their possession play early on, and they were aggressive defensively. And that is sort of the calling card of this Rapids team. They're going to be one of the most ball-dominant outfits in the league. They're going to be one of the most build-up heavy outfits in the league. And they're going to play through you, try to funnel their possession up into the attacking third, rely on their wingers to go 1v1 and create chances, and then have Hafa Navau dropping deep to sort of collect some of those moments and to crash the box. The recipe seems clear to the point where Matt Wells has been able to rotate who in his team is playing where so effectively because players seem to understand the different roles. In this game, it was Wayne Frederick, who started the year as a number 8, then became a number 10 for bits and spurts, and then was deputizing at left back in this game. He was playing sort of as this inverted left-sided center mid in possession because he is more of a center mid than he is a left back. And he looked fine. He looked comfortable in the role. Dante Seeley was playing on the left. We've seen him play on both wings so far this season. We're seeing players in so many different spots, and they all look so clear of what their responsibilities are. That was something that really impressed me in this game. Andrew Clausen wrote about that for Backfield as well. I think it's a really astute observation. The other thing that I loved in this match was the wingers getting assists. Dante Seeley gets an assist. Georgie Manungu gets an assist in his first appearance for the Rapids. He came off the bench and played on the left and looked really, really good. He had a couple of just such dangerous 1v1 moments that led to chances. And that's his whole game. Like, that's why, Geoff, you and I talked about that transfer after deadline day. And I think we're both so intrigued about it because the Rapids funnel play through their wingers. And Matt Wells called this team a winger's dream to play in when he was talking with me for Backfield. And you watch the kinds of touches and the positions and the body positioning that their wingers receive the ball, and it's so clear that it is a winger's dream because they're getting so many of those isolated 1v1 moments that they love so much. Manungu is elite at that stuff in MLS. The Rapids were elite in this game. I loved it so much.
What's the ceiling for the Rapids, Joe, do you think right now?
I think their ceiling is still clearly below LAFC and Vancouver in the Western Conference.
Brave.
Yeah, super brave, right? Really, really bold of me to say that. I think their ceiling is probably like 5th, maybe at this stage. So a couple other teams that are above them. It's interesting, Taylor, because I kind of asked Matt Wells a similar question to that. Not phrased maybe quite like that, but I was so curious about the Rapids because in the first week of the season, they travel on the road in Seattle. And they basically spend the whole game in their defensive third. Not in the way that you think, not defending in a low block like we might think of a team playing on the road in Seattle. but a team building up in their own third. And they just could not establish possession higher up the field. They could not successfully create chances in their build-up play. And it wasn't long after that I chatted with Matt Wells, and I asked him, like, did you think you can come into this group and get them to play this build-up heavy, like Postecoglou-y sort of soccer and succeed even when you've got, I don't know, kind of a washed-up Rob Holding and an 18-year-old in the back and fullbacks that have never played in these systems before and Josh Attention? I mean, like, did you think you could do that? And he said, yeah. Like, I think altering your style with just because you don't think you have the players is a poor excuse. He qualified that, though, very quickly with, we have to recognize, though, that there are some constraints on what you can do with players that maybe don't fit the exact profiles that you want. And I think that's where the Rapids are right now, which we've seen Wells successfully implement his style of play. That's what's happened. The Rapids are playing the way that he wants, more or less. And we've seen them have some success that way. I think there is a limit on how much success they can have because ultimately they still have a lot of pieces that don't look like elite MLS pieces to me at this stage. But man, they look a whole lot better than I thought they would at this stage of the season. So I'll say fourth or fifth is the ceiling.
And I will say, Joe, I like your assessment that they are probably the surprise team, because I think that when I'm recalling our week of season previews, we were higher on San Jose. We were higher on Real Salt Lake. We saw the areas where those two clubs that are maybe the other alternatives in the West, certainly. We saw where they had that opportunity to really excel and crawl into the top 6 of the West at a minimum. And you know, with Colorado, I think that was more difficult to project. Part of that is, granted, first-time coach, young coach, not sure which principles he would take over across the pond, which ones he would leave behind, and all those things. And you're right, Joe. Like, when you look, especially in defensive areas, which is so crucial to a possession structure, just be able to have that calm epicenter, right? Like, you've kind of seen since the start of the season, I think that all of their most possessive games have happened in the first 3 games or so, 4 games, and then they've kind of eased off of that sort of let's keep the ball regardless of where it is. And so, like, I wonder how they're going to evolve it. Now, the good news is they do have a club owner who also owns Arsenal, which I've heard is like a really high-spending club. And so I'm assuming then when ownership... Hold on, I'm just getting word. Oh no. Oh, they're not going to invest in this roster at all. And so that's where this gets really difficult to see. Because ultimately, if you don't do that, you are going to come up against those limitations. I think Wells is spot on with that. And when you want to have initiative with the ball, players who are good in possession, who are smart, consistent, dependable with the ball at their feet, do cost more, generally in the transfer market and in salaries, because these are the things that they're able to sell club owners on as being valuable, right? So it just will be interesting to see where they can evolve it. Now, if they can get good defensive play domestically, you know, bring in some of the center, like Montreal has brought in a lot of young center backs over the last couple of years from other MLS clubs, hoping to get, like, you know, stable defending, and ask Marco Donadel how that worked out. But I think that if Colorado can do a little bit more of that, or at least, you know, bring in alternatives to Rob Holding, who you can project to keep for the next 4 years. Maybe another player in the mold of Austin Trusty, which worked really well for Colorado as well, which, you know, keep in mind was kind of a buy low flyer from Philadelphia at the time, or generally seen as a domestic flyer. There is room to grow on this one. Absolutely.
Geoff, for you, room to grow for any particular game from the weekend? That's my clumsy transition to ask you, what was your game of the weekend?
Well, I think that we found that Vancouver actually may have had room to grow. And so I'm looking at a 2-0 win that felt like the scoreline flattered the team that lost 2-0 in a very interesting way. Like, look, it wasn't the most impressive game you've seen from the Vancouver Whitecaps, but I think that we kind of haven't talked about them as much this year. They've gone into sort of foregone conclusion territory, and I've noticed this as I'm writing about them this year as well on The Guardian, where I reference Vancouver as, like, you know, which team was it this weekend? They were second in the league in this impressive stat and this impressive stat. Number one, of course, being Vancouver, and that's just kind of like the level of it, where it's like, yeah, well, of course, it's like 2024 Columbus Crew, right? Where it's like they'd won MLS Cup, and we were just talking about them in this rarefied era as if everyone assumed it. Well, when you look at how they've evolved, I think Jesper Sorensen learned a lot of lessons from last year's MLS Cup, because keep in mind, he pulls Ali Ahmed after he scores the goal, and then pretty quickly things fall apart. And it looks like there's a little bit more intentionality with how substitutions are being made on the wing that I really appreciate. There are a lot of dynamic players there, but none who really fit the profile of last year's starters, which was usually like Jaden Nelson and Ali Ahmed. Well, right now against New York City, they had Emmanuel Sabi, who's been starting a lot, come off the bench, which I think that's good to keep him fresh. I think they also had Caicedo come off the bench on the other side, and then they had Sabali and Badval starting. And what they were able to do is work really well with decoy runs, off-ball movement, because right now the way that this thing is built is to be able to keep the ball centrally, keep the ball with their most talented players, right? And it's just so effortless when you watch as this team progresses upfield and the line advances. You can see, okay, they're getting their first shooting look. They're pushing the ball out to the wing, so they're progressing. Okay, great. Now they're going to kick it back, okay? And now they're going to be trying to funnel the ball to Thomas Mueller or Brian White. Oh, that's not on offer? Well, Seb Berhalter's just standing right there at the edge of the box, and he's ready to fizz one just over the crossbar or maybe try to curl it to the far post. Like, it is so dependable and so consistent regardless of who's on the field in those wing spots at this point, where they just looked absolutely dominant. The flip side of this is a really good Matt Freese game. If you want to be able to watch, what is Matt Freese kind of like, what kind of preparation is he going to get for the World Cup? Because, I think after the last window, I think we all agree, like, that's just his role now. Really tested. And had some incredibly impressive saves, and not just the quality of save where it's just like you kept it out of the goal and then, you really hoped a defender was nearby to clear it. These were really good, either caught the save, push it out of bounds, or like punch it so far clear that your defense has time to reset. And that's the sort of stuff that a really good goalkeeper does to help his defense work a little less hard. And I think that is a symbiotic relationship that can continue to benefit. So just a really good sort of game between the best team in Major League Soccer and the best goalkeeper that the U.S. has right now. Yeah, really entertaining to throw in.
I love the free shout, Geoff. According to FOTMOP, he saved over a goal, more than expected based off of expected goals on target. He was good in this game. That NYC FC gave up so much, I think is also a huge story. And that's exactly what you've gotten at. Vancouver are incredible. I was writing over the weekend and thinking over the weekend, man, I wonder if the rest of MLS is wishing that they had disassembled this Vancouver team. Tom Bogert reported for The Athletic in the days after MLS Cup that 7 Vancouver players had offers in for them around the league, or that there was interest in all these different players, right? And almost none of them moved. It was Nelson who moved within the league and Ahmed who moved without the league. And those were the 2 players that were key last year who left over the offseason. Laborda didn't leave. He's still putting up numbers. Sebastian Berhalter, although I suppose his future is a bit more uncertain, he's still around making moves. I mean, this team is just so good. Like, they strung together an 11-pass sequence in the first 60 seconds of this game that teed up a Brian White header. I mean, it's from inside the 6-yard box. They were dominant over an NYC FC team that came into the league with a top 10 expected goal differential. They do not have that anymore, NYC FC, because they lost this game so badly. Vancouver, to me, look like obviously a top 3 team, bare minimum, in Major League Soccer. I think they're probably playing the best ball of anybody in the league right now. And I mean, man, it's a little too early to tell, right? Because you have CONCACAF play still impacting Nashville and LAFC games for those guys coming up today. So there is still some unevenness, and Vancouver bowing out of that makes them look a bit better in league play. But man, they look every bit as elite as they did last year in what was a historically great season.
Maybe a very obvious answer to this question, but I will ask you both for your thoughts. Obviously, we're talking about a Vancouver team that has Thomas Mueller in it. Who is their most important player, do you think? Who is their either most important or least replaceable if something goes wrong?
Joe, do you have one off the cuff? Because I'm surprised by my first instinct on this one.
Genuinely,
I like the question.
I did not have an answer because I think that's kind of antithetical to what Vancouver have done over the last year plus. There probably is an answer. But when you think about this team, their injury list was a mile long last year. It's kind of a mile long already this year. They're still missing. They're missing Ralph Priso. They're still missing Ryan Gauld. They're missing Ranko Veselinovic after that ACL tear last year. That's 3, I guess, starters. I mean, Priso, I guess, is one of those guys now. I mean, and they just
he was
just doesn't
because
matter.
of Veselinovic, but nonetheless.
Yeah, right. And but now he's like absolutely in that starting tier, and it just hasn't mattered. So Geoff, who's your answer?
Andres Cubas came back in this game, and that was really important. But I think what I noticed even more is that it just unlocks another side of Sebastian Berhalter. And I just, like, every time I watch him, I just see that he's, like, added another club to his bag. Like, just so consistently and dependably, he is just, like, building that sort of, like, instinctive approach to midfield that I think, especially in a role like Major League Soccer, where, like, midfields can have such an outsized impact on a team's ability to do a lot of things because of how squad spending is castrated and whatnot. Like, I just think that there is this there's cruciality to how he moves the ball, how he's able to spray it, how he's constantly able to get into positions to collect and sustain possession, and pretty consistently knows exactly where to put the ball based on where his teammates are and where the opponents are. And he's just getting better constantly as he's getting more minutes. This is like, finally, when you have a player that you're kind of saying, like, yeah, his athleticism isn't great, but he's very cerebral. Okay, well, when he finally gets the athleticism to stay on the field, you can kind of see how that cerebral side really benefits from it. So the flip side of it is, could they replace him? Sure. I think so generally. Like, I think that free 8 role is something that a lot of players have. You can convert someone who's used to being a number 10 into that role. You can do a lot of other clever things to get someone into that role. So I suppose in a way, like, it would be replaceable. But I think that when you're looking at who is the most important player on this team right now, I think it's Sebastian Berhalter.
Fair enough. Joe, are you willing to accept that, or are you standing with your Bobby Warshaw take of everyone is important because they're all very good?
I'm gonna go Kubas actually after thinking about it, but the Bobby thing works too.
I mean, it's a good answer and a fair answer at that. Very briefly, my game of the weekend was Miami 2, Red Bulls 2, because this felt for all the world like a game that was going to be 5-0 in my mind. It felt like Red Bulls going up against Messi and co, like hungry to get their first win in their new stadium. A lot of teenagers could be overmatched, could be outplayed, outworked, and instead kind of the opposite was true. I think Miami superior XG, but overall it felt like this scoreline was a fair reflection of things and a fair reflection of the young talent the Red Bulls have. Julian Hall assisting both, I believe, but the first one especially, the way he's able to kind of drive at the defense, cut back, find Ruvalcaba sort of wide open. It's a great pass. It's a great finish. That Miami kind of fight back the way they do. I think Sovetti's goal at the back post from the cross that seems kind of straightforward, but I think has a high degree of difficulty. I think we see those skied somewhat often, so he's able to get there, use the instep, put it on frame, make it 1-1 at the break. And then that we get 2 more goals in the second half. It's a pretty thrilling game with Adrien Mehmeti adding the equalizer somewhat late in like the 75th, 77th minute, something like that. I just thought this was a fascinating game from start to finish, and I think that's compounded by having expected it to be more one-sided than it ended up being.
Yeah, I think this goes a damaging game, Taylor, for your concern about the Red Bulls, sort of, and it seems like that's kind of where you've gotten. With all that, we talked about that a good bit last week. When will the youth and experience of this team really show up? It did show up in this game in an awesome way, I suppose. And you already talked about Hall, who looks really good. He looks really, really good. Someone asked me yesterday, like, how many injuries away is he from the World Cup roster? And I said probably too many. But, man, if this rise had come 4 months earlier, I think we'd maybe be having a different conversation. Adrien Mehmeti continues to do stuff on the ball that nobody in the pool is doing. Like, there's a moment in this game where he gets the ball between 3 Miami players and just retains it, right? Which is not the sexiest thing in the world, but that stuff is so important and matters so much. Ronald Doncourt, young number 8 for this team, he was maybe the best non-Messi player on the field in this match. I think the Red Bulls were impressive in this game. All that being said, I still think Miami did absolutely enough to win, right? I mean, from a Red Bulls perspective, if they lost narrowly on the road to Miami, there's no shame in that, right? But I think Miami did enough to win. It was good for them to get to see Bertarame score his first goal in league play for Miami. And I feel like that's maybe going to be a little bit of a burden lifted. I just still don't get the sense that Mascherano knows exactly what the best lineup for this group is. They get Reguilon back at left back, which I think is really important for the balance of the attack on that left side, but he's still not fit to go 90. So he plays 45, and then you end up with this weird misshapen attack in the second half. So Miami's still a work in progress. I'm still not really worried about them. I mean, they're not going to set the points record or win the Shield or anything along those lines at this stage. But, yeah, man, the Red Bulls continue to do enough in these kinds of games, and it's the kids really, truly driving them.
I know that I was a little, bit of a Bertarame skeptic when he signed, so, I hope this isn't just me being, a hater, but I think that goal would have meant more if it had, the result had stood thereafter, because it was a go-ahead goal. It was in, early part of the second half. Crowd was really excited about it, and I thought that could have been a moment where you really, the kind of striker mentality and the confidence that you need to have to be able to win games like that. I thought that would have been a really good sort of proof of concept for him. The fact that Mehmeti then scores after that, For a player who's already a little unconfident and feeling the pressure of not having been able to do this in CONCACAF like usual and not having scored in his first 6 games in MLS, I hope that this doesn't increase the pressure on him to kind of overextend and therefore kind of go back to a previous version, because they really just need someone who can, tap in those goals, make the good movement patterns, create that space, especially for Lionel Messi as you get towards the central area in the box. Someone whose movement is clever enough and good enough to leave the space that Messi wants to run into, because he's just going to run into that space whether you give it to him or not. It's going to be more effective if you're not there too.
I also take it back. Miami could win the Shield. I didn't realize the points. I take that back. I recant. The city of Phoenix recants.
The voice of the city of Phoenix recants.
My mistake.
And the city of Phoenix as well, since you are representative of both.
Good.
The Red Bull lost to Montreal for a moment. We're going to talk Montreal in a bit.
Yeah.
Is that essentially just that if you go like man-to-man against them and really limit their options, then the youth and experience shows, but if you give them open play and space to operate, they will find a way through? I'm still struggling to really understand that loss to Montreal for the Red Bulls.
I won't pretend to know the tactical zeitgeist of MLS Next Pro. So Joe, if you do,
It's
please
not the
step in.
sentence I thought was going to be said on this show today.
That's fair.
Continue.
I don't think there are many teams in Next Pro doing man marking systems. And so if you do have a core of players who's kind of graduating with Michael Bradley, or certainly you have a coach whose previous head coaching experience was in a league that was kind of devoid of those structures, I can see where there's maybe some difficulty to at least identify, hey, you're facing this, or we should have had these 3 drills instead of those 3 drills the week prior so that we were better adept for quick convergence and how do you get around them, dribble through, that sort of thing. So, I'm with you. It looks like the squirreliest result of the early season in hindsight, especially just given the state of Montreal, which, again, we'll get to shortly. But I think that, it just shows that this New York team, as we kind of expect, still have some learning to do. They've won more games than they've lost, but they have a negative goal differential, right? They've just got some stuff to work out here, but some really encouraging signs through 7 games all the same.
That was also the Ethan Horvath game, parentheses, negative version, that Montreal Red Bull game as well.
That's right.
He had an okay game in this one, didn't he? I meant to write down his stats.
Against
before we
Miami?
started
I
recording.
think he was fine.
Never mind. Goals prevented, not a high number, put it that way. Better than Dane St. Clair, though, so at least there's that. On that note, we'll take a break. We'll come back and talk a bit about Montreal coaches whose seats are getting hot. Back soon. Welcome back to the Total Soccer Show, everybody. We turn now to Montreal, who have sacked Marco Donadel 7 games into the season, the same number of games as wins he had in his career, unless you count shootouts, in which case it was a whopping 8, which does seem like it then sets the stage for, you got to get rid of this guy. It's 7 wins in 42 games, 8-ish wins if you want to go that route. Didn't seem to have the best of ideas, didn't seem to have a clear, cohesive idea for what he wanted to do with this team. And then simultaneously, this team doesn't seem to have a clear idea of what it wants to do with this team. Geoff Ruder, why have they sacked Marco Donadel at this point in the season? Other than that, it's just what Montreal seemed to do.
It's just what Montreal seemed to do.
Okay.
That's truly all this is at this point. Because you look and it's like, what has changed around him since he took over on an interim basis? Because keep in mind, they did this after 7 games this year. They did this after 5 games last year with Laurent Courtois.
What
right?
restraint, man. What restraint they showed to get all the way to 7 games this year. I mean, that's special. That's really
Maybe
special.
they baked in a 2 weeks notice. I'm just realizing. Maybe they were like, we're actually going to notify you that you've got 2 weeks. And that's just that's our lesson we learned from Courtois. Our HR was not happy with the urgency of the dismissal. No, it was a bizarre match to begin with. It felt like kind of one of those wrestling loser leaves town sort of bouts, right? Where you had the Philadelphia Union coming in to Shad Saputo, Bradley Carnell, the first coach to oversee an 0-6 defense of a supporter shield in MLS history, Marco Donadel, the head coach of CF Montreal, both, very negative spaces to be in a coach. And, ultimately Montreal scores first. Montreal fails to capitalize on their chances. They give up an equalizer. They absolutely wilt. What you then saw from a team that maybe believes in its coach a little bit more is that Philadelphia harnesses momentum. They don't take their foot off the gas. Even after they score the second, they're continuing to pile on pressure. And there really was no point after Philadelphia equalized where it looked like Montreal was going to go ahead and regain the lead. And that's probably what you're kind of looking for when you're a club. It's like, how hard are our players trying to fight back once things don't go their way? And if they're not, is it because of a talent deficiency? Is it because the players on the field aren't, whatever the case may be? And I think that the coach is on that list. The hard part is the coach isn't like the biggest issue here by a long shot, and this announcement is laid out with 2 of Joey Saputo's sons once again apologizing to fans, saying, "We hear you." They've done this like every year for 4 or 5 years now, too. By the way, we hear you. We hear you're unsatisfied with how this has gone, pretty much since Wilfred Dance left, actually. We understand that this is not the standard we want to keep. We couldn't agree more, and we will do everything we can to fix it. They say, having done nothing they could to fix it yet. Just a really kind of depressing state of affairs over there, if I'm honest. Like, you look at how did Donadel get this job? I mean, he was the interim coach for 35 games in all comps last year, 0.97 points per game. That's lower than any head coach in the history of the club, and they fired all of them. right? So, like, in theory, you would look at that, and a couple left, I suppose, but, like, you would look at that and say, maybe that means he's not really doing it with the ingredients that will provide him in this kitchen. I don't know, man. Like, it's such a self-defeating sort of position once you're talking about CF Montreal, because this has just been such a state of neglect, or if not neglect, then failure to keep stride with MLS across its evolution throughout the club's history, but especially since about 2016 or so. Well, since 2014, when Joey Saputo bought Bologna and therefore treated CF Montreal like bologna instead.
Did you write that one down?
I tweeted it, or tweeted it yesterday.
It's funny, Geoff, because when you gave the kitchen analogy, like ingredients of the kitchen, my mind immediately was trying to think of, when I walk into the grocery store, what is the least appealing food I could leave with? I decided on Lunchables, at least for now. Like, Lunchables, I think, are vile, personally. Although, just in general, cheese and crackers doesn't do a lot for me.
My mind went to just, like, the chicken feet sort of section, but Lunchables
even
too.
that, like, you can surely toss a chicken foot in a stock or something like that, right?
Yeah,
I feel
you
like
can.
you can get some real value
Very
out of
true.
that. Like Montreal's owner, Joey Saputo, and his sons, along with Gabriel Gervais, who run the club in a lot of the most important aspects of the club, they've given all these coaches Lunchables to work with. Like, this is an unserious club that is firing managers because they want to save face, right? I mean, that's the reality. Is they're embarrassed at how bad their team is, the team that they don't spend money on. They have not spent money on a real DP in ages. They don't spend money on the
2014,
salary.
I think.
Yeah, it's been forever. Right now, their DP is Ivan Jaime, who looks like a good player. They have him on loan from Porto. Probably not going to keep him when his loan's up in June, not the end of the season, in June. They don't assemble good rosters because presumably they don't know how. They don't spend money on the team, presumably because they don't care and are content to watch the enterprise value tick up before, mercifully, some sort of sale could come down the line in the future that hopefully keeps the team in Montreal if you're a Montreal fan. Like, this club is an embarrassment. There is no more embarrassing club in Major League Soccer than CF Montreal. They are either incapable or they are not trying. And I actually think it's a bit of both. And that is just a damning combination for a group of fans that deserve so much more. There is no more absurd club in the entire league, and they're being driven into the ground over and over and over again. Marco Donadel maybe wasn't doing a very good job. Sure, I can get on board with that. We had a season plus, basically, because he took over for Laurent Courtois for the 5-game sample last year, which, I mean, that is just a joke also. I mean, they maybe didn't give Marco Donadel, maybe they gave him too much time. Maybe they didn't give him enough time. We have no way to know. We have no way to know how good of a coach Marco Donadel is. We probably know he's not a truly elite coach because we have seen some managers in MLS make lemonade out of the sour oranges, right? Like, it is possible to do that sort of thing. So he's probably not in that tier. But is he pretty good? Is he bad? We literally have no idea because this roster is horrific and has been assembled by people that clearly have no real understanding of how to operate a soccer club, and it's embarrassment. It's an absolute embarrassment.
I watched a couple different like local news segments about this, just trying to gauge like what the vibe is, and it was really telling. They like both reporters asked different people, like, do you have hope that the situation improves? Do you have hope that it gets better? And they both said yes, to their credit, but it was the equivalent of like this. Like, do you have hope that the situation improves?
No.
You gotta have hope. I mean, yeah, you know, like, it was just such a like, no, but I don't want to say no because that just seems bad. And I also think soccer fans are just wired to be like, I'm not fair weather. I'm here for the duration. Of course I have hope, but it does seem really difficult to see how this improves given the lack of expenditure, given the lack of seriousness, as Joe's pointed out. Do we have historical precedent of Don Garber stepping in or getting involved and being like, okay, what's going on? Like, give me an idea here. Because I keep seeing people say, Garber's got to get involved here. Garber's got to do something. And I see the logical counterpoint of, why is it sometimes you guys want Garber doing stuff and sometimes you think Garber is evil? I'm quite confused by this whole thing. So I, too, am confused. I ask you two for your thoughts.
There'd be no precedent for any, like... Oh, say that again, Geoff?
Late stage Chivas, I think the league had more of a role in running a club than usual, but like that's a terrible parallel to draw if you're CF Montreal.
I just think, like, outside of compromised ownership situations, like RSL is one I think of more recently,
Sure.
where the league steps in and forces a sale. I don't think that's the water that we're swimming in here, right? I mean, like, I don't know that you can just... Well, I don't know. to be honest, I don't think we have direct precedent for this situation.
Yeah, but here's the criteria for like you've checked the boxes of what MLS kind of expects of its teams. Do you own and operate your stadium, and is it soccer its primary tenant? Yes. Do you have an academy that can fuel the first team? Well, no, it's not fueling the first team much right now. I think there's a career 1,700 homegrown minutes on the squad, but yes, historically they have had an academy that continues to produce players. Okay, are you relevant within your market? Well, do fans being disappointed count as relevant? I guess it does, because they care enough to feel disappointed. So that is actually more than I think some other MLS teams would get in a similar situation. So sadly, in a perverse way, it's kind of helping the argument that people care about the former impact. So he's checked the boxes. Joey Saputo has checked the boxes of what MLS looks for in its owners. He just hasn't really gone above and beyond, and certainly hasn't since he bought into Bologna. The other part of this that I keep coming back to, who would want to coach CF Montreal at this point? Because that's the flip side of this then, is like, okay, well then who could work better in this ecosystem? Is this a case where he just needs to kind of find young Italian coaches, bring them over, season them, and kind of see if they're going to be ready for Bologna? Well, I don't think that pipeline really is open yet from MLS to Italy, right? Like, I just don't think that that's really going to be... frankly, I just don't think that they're thinking that high level about how to utilize these two clubs. I think that they have Bologna, and then they have a little project that they have at home when they're back in Canada, right? Like, I don't know who would coach it. Remember Laurent Courtois, right? Like, he is back as an assistant in Columbus now. I had to check. But, like, if Donadel wanted a career in coaching, I feel really bad for him, because, like Joe said, we just don't know if he's good at coaching. But, so Joe, hear me out. You've got league veteran who's desperate to get back into a job, right? So someone who's coached, been out of a job for at least, let's say, 4 months. Savarese is a great name. You could give me Adrian Heath, Caleb Porter, just guys who have coached around the league before and are not there. Young coach who hasn't had maybe this is next pro, maybe you're trying to do the Wilfred Nancy, Laurent Courtois sort of thing, or maybe you're going into the USL or the CPL to look for a coach. What profile would you even look at? And would they want this job in particular?
Do you have the ability to Google? If so, no thank you.
I mean, I think. No. When we changed the branding, we stopped being bad. Don't fact check that. That's all right. My honest answer, Geoff, is it doesn't matter. Like, truly. I mean, I think Montreal could look a number of different ways. I think in regards to who would want this job, I actually do think there are plenty of people that would want this job. Rationally, they should recognize that it's going to be an opportunity to gain some experience, and then you're going to get fired, right?
And if nothing else, it's a tough economy. You need to work.
Yeah, exactly. Got to take the job when you can get it. I mean, there are 30 MLS jobs. Those jobs are like reasonably high profile in the grand scheme of global soccer. When you get this job, people are going to know your name who don't know your name now. And people are going to know your name at clubs that matter more than Montreal who don't know it now. And I think that actually does matter. The Courtois example is very reasonable. To be fair to the guy, he went from an MLS Next Pro head coach to an MLS job to an MLS assistant job. Like, in the grand scheme of things, he's still kind of bumped up a rung in the ladder, right? So I kind of believe Lucas Saputo had his press conference yesterday, by the way, and was like, we wanted to be patient after this. We didn't want to make a decision in the heat of the moment. Even when all the rumblings coming out of Montreal was that they'd already made the decision, which I don't know if that's true or not. But, such restraint to wait a whole day, right, to then announce that. I can't believe the patience that's shown there. And apparently Donadel was not living up to the expectations that they set as a group. Okay, I'm sure that's true, but you might want to reevaluate those expectations, pal. Like, I think there are lots of people that would take this job. I just think those people should take it recognizing that they're not going to succeed in the traditional sense. To the point where whenever I write season previews for Montreal, basically I always do for Backfield every year, like, hey, why this year will be a success and why it won't be a success. And I think every year for Montreal, for the why it will be a success, the answer is it'll be a success if you define success differently than the other 29 teams in MLS. Like, that's how coaches are going to have to think of this job, because that's the reality of the situation that they're going to be walking into.
2 questions from me. First, hear me out before I finish. There is a certain former coach who is available. If you are Wilfred Nancy and that phone rings, do you hit silence and let them know that you screened the call? Do you let it ring to voicemail? Or do you answer just to say no and then hang up?
Oh, good question.
I would let it ring and go to voicemail.
Same.
You've got to be precarious when you're dealing with a meddlesome ex. You really do.
I agree with Geoff 100%.
All right, then Joe, since Geoff answered that one, my follow-up question, should this be our new designator of if spring has sprung. When Montreal sacks their because that does mean that, like, right, they're playing at home. That means winter is over. They finally get a home game.
Yes.
So in that way, we can at least learn some things. 5 games, 7 games, what have you.
Sold. I think that's the way. I mean, move over, Puxatawny Phil. Like, we've got a different season change
Right?
indicator. Montreal fired their coach. Herald it all.
See, you turn a sad thing into a positive thing. We did have this question from MJ in the Discord. With Donadel gone, who's more likely to lose their job? Greg Vanney, Phil Neville, or Bradley Carnell? All three having okay weekends this past weekend. All three getting some results that were maybe needed. If we want to broaden it out a little bit, which other MLS coaches do we think are on the hottest of hot seats?
I mean, I think Henrik Rydstrom's seat is darn hot. If he's not included in that bunch,
Sure.
There's some challenges for Columbus right now because they just lost Wissam Abu Ali, which I'm not really sure if this is a good thing to say or not, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's possible that injury saves Henrik Rydstrom's job because he can now look at
Expectations
that.
look very different.
Exactly right. He can now look at that and say, well, what did you expect? I mean, I played most of the season, 4/5 of the season without my best player. I'm sorry. It's not my fault, right? And in that sense, he's going to be right.
Mm-hmm.
Columbus, I think they're done, Columbus, unless they make unexpectedly big swings in the summer. Their DPs are Daniel Gazdag, who doesn't play, although he did play a little bit in that draw with Orlando. Abu Ali, who's now out for the year with a torn ACL and some meniscus injury, and I cannot believe that he played more after going down the first time over the weekend. And then Diego Rossi, who's great. But for some reason, Rydstrom has changed basically everything that was working. And I know I came on the show like a month ago and said I wasn't that worried. I've completely changed my mind. Even pre-Abu Ali injury, it's a nightmare. So I would add Rydstrom to that bunch. I would add Pat Noonan probably to that bunch.
Yep.
And I would add Nico Estevez to that bunch.
Yep.
Even though I do not think ultimately the real problems, like the biggest ones, lay at the feet of Nico Estevez. I do not think he's done much to elevate that group. But of that trio, Geoff, and I'm curious where you would go on this, Phil Neville is still my answer among that bunch. Ned Grabovoy came out and said we want to give him until the World Cup break and give him those 14 games, then we can evaluate some stuff. Sure, okay, that's fine. I think that's probably still, if he's let go at that stage, which who knows if he's going to be or not, right? If that happens, I still think that will be far earlier than any of the other coaches that MJ mentioned, and maybe even any of the other ones that I mentioned as well.
MJ, I agree with you on the top three, first of all. Like, I had notes laid out of other coaches. Joe read both of the names of other contenders I had, which is Pat Noonan, since he falls further because the expectations are higher than any other team that's outside the playoff places right now. And so you would generally say, if they feel like this is as far as this coach can take them, they'll go somewhere else. I also agreed on Nico Estevez, but I threw in a caveat. But at that point, you got to consider Rodolfo Borrell, the guy who hired him, right? And you've just got to look and say if this is the hiring process. This was one of those that the fan base was really underwhelmed, where it was like, we interviewed hundreds of candidates from all around the world, and the best one we could find was in Texas. Like,
well, would you look at that?
Maybe it happened like that. It's a big state. There are a lot of people there, but like I'd be very surprised if that was the case. So like, yeah, look at that one. In terms of these three, like you've got some pros and cons for each, right? For Greg Vanney, the pro is that he won MLS Cup 2 years ago, right? So you know that he can take this team, actualize it if you've built it correctly, if everyone's healthy, whatever. He also has Ricky Puig's heart, or at least did a year ago. I guess I haven't seen as many of those, like, you know, kind of loud defenses, and maybe Vanney just hasn't faced as many calls for his job as he did last year when they were winless, and what was that, like 1390, something like that. For Phil Neville, the pro is that it's his final year anyway. He hasn't missed the playoffs yet with Portland, and I think that does matter to Portland to be on that side of the red line. The con is that the game is looking stagnant, the model is luck dependent, and frankly, if you look at the discourse and if you look at independent media there, fans don't like his brand of soccer whatsoever, and some of the condescension and throwing players under the bus hasn't held up well either. For Bradley Carnell, he won the Shield last year. The underlying numbers actually still kind of like this team this year too. But player development has stagnated. Kevin Sullivan, like being a viable loan candidate, or at least like having enough of a scarcity of first division minutes for teams to even cheekily suggest it that they would bring him in on loan, is kind of an indictment of your ability to develop your top talent. And there isn't a plan B really to his system. And so once teams figure out how to deconstruct a Bradley Carnell team, they can usually pretty well do it. The hardest part is Vanney has the longest contract by far. Carnell and Neville, their deals as announced are up at the end of this season. Vanney's goes into 2028. So I think it is probably Neville still. I mean, we already have identifiers about the World Cup break, so we already do have that sort of context of the club is already aware of the issue and they're thinking of remedying it at some point, and they're seeing what remedies are necessary. But Philly, I suppose, if you do have a situation where they go back and they lose their next 2 games, let's say, so then you only have 1 win in 9 or 1 win in 10 even, and you're not seeing Kevin Sullivan make gains to help, kind of show people that when Man City comes in and buys one of your players 3 years early, then it's probably because your academy is good and now you can see the next guy too. If it looks like he's stagnating and they're just waiting until he gets to City to really do a lot of that work, that wouldn't be very good for the Philadelphia Union brand as a developmental and selling club. So at a certain point, they would have to reconsider.
What would have to happen in the next 3 or so games for Nico Estevez to kind of move to the top of that list for you all or make that more likely? They've got U.S. Open Cup against Louisville City. Then they are away to Toronto. Then they are away to San Jose, before being home to Houston. Those are the next 4.
Oh, that's tough. That's a tough stretch. Joe?
I think Austin should be worried regardless. Like I think Estevez's seat's probably quite toasty because if you're Burrell, and I think the seat's toasty. I think probably he has until Brendan Vasquez comes back from injury, and we see maybe a month or 2 after the World Cup break, which is I think after the World Cup break really when we're going to see Vasquez. And you can make the argument that now he has the full roster available to him. Maybe they move Azuni in the summer and try to get a new DP in, and that breathes life. I don't think Estevez's seat is scorching. I just think it's warm right now, and probably the next few games is not going to be enough for it to make a huge difference. I just think Estevez, across Dallas and Austin, there haven't been a lot of attacking ideas. At the same time, I'm sympathetic because the roster is just bad. I mean, and it was clear that it was going to be bad, and we talked about it on the show, and that's exactly what it is. And that part is not his fault.
I think that the thing that would move him up the list is others moving themselves down, right? Like if you have the Galaxy getting into better form, people will forget about Greg Vanney's contract extension last year amidst that stretch for another couple of months. If Portland rights the ship and can harness the momentum of beating LAFCB, that's going to be really good for their morale too, and that could really help them pick up results. And then Philly, just whatever. If you can get back into the playoff places, Cardell's fine for the end of the year. So. I think it has more to do with jobs around them because right now winless in 5 and, even at home, kind of struggling. I think that they have 1 win at home so far this year and it's a 1-0 over DC. I think generally that fan base expects a bit better.
If we're looking at worst form of the last 5 games, you've got Montreal with 1 win in 5. We've talked about them. The Union, 1 win in 5. We've talked about them. Sporting KC, we kind of know the situation there. And then, it's worth noting, Houston, also on that list, 1 win in 5. 6 points so far to start the season from their first 6 games. Ben Olsen, that seat warm at all, or is Benny secure for a good long while?
Geoff?
I'm struggling to read the ambition of Houston right now, right? And I think that generally he's shown that they can win games that others maybe wouldn't have expected them to. I mean, that win over Portland, I know I gushed over for 10 minutes a few weeks ago. That one was a lot of fun. They beat Chicago. That's a credible result as well this year. That's another situation where I would imagine the sporting director is also getting looked at. And so then, if depending on the club, they might say you are not able to actually dismiss your coach because your job is also under scrutiny right now. And I think that Pat Onstad has been in that job for quite a while. And so that is another situation where I think it's a tandem, kind of like Austin. It's just a Texas thing. Again, I guess you just end up in these situations where you got to look at the whole thing. But I think they got to look at the whole thing.
Texas two-step.
There we go. Sorry, Dallas.
Phoenix right there. We're going to take one more break. We'll come back, talk about a few more big moments, big incidents from the past weekend, including yet another red card for Chris McVeigh. Back soon. Welcome back to the Total Soccer Show. I want to go back to a point Joe made much earlier in the show when talking about Julian Hall and the question of how many injuries would it take for him to be in the U.S. squad or potentially in the U.S. squad. Joe, I just want to ask, did you not get the memo that all of the talking heads have to be praising Zavier Gozo? Because that's the rule now. It's Zavier Gozo and no one else.
I mean, he warrants it. Zavier Gozo. RSL and Seattle were off this weekend, so I can praise both of them?
Even
question
so.
Mark?
I mean, but I found it really interesting that it was it was Twellman, it was Herc, and it was somebody else, I forget, maybe Sebi Salazar, I can't remember, being he should be in the team. He should be there. It felt like that happened really fast, and it became a consensus opinion. Is he the one that is going to be the talking point now? Now that we, Like Banks is maybe pulling himself out of contention? Are we going to have all the chat be about should Zavier Gozo be in the team? Is he the one that makes us better?
I mean, shout out to those guys for watching the games. Like, I think it's a reasonable takeaway from watching the games this season. And we talked about it probably a little earlier than some of those folks, if I had to guess. But like, Gozo's been awesome this season, and he's in a position of need where there are literally 0 U.S. wide attacking players who consistently beat players 1v1, and Gozo is a wide attacking player who beats players 1v1. So he fills the biggest absence in role in the entire U.S. men's national team pool, and he's been good. So I don't think we're going to see him at the World Cup, although I would love to see that. I'd be in favor of that sort of thing. And I think he would be a more logical person to bring than a Julian Hall, just in terms of need, like I said before. But I like the take. This has just been a banner year for young players in MLS. I mean, Mehmeti, Hall, and Mehmeti and Gozo really probably are the two that I would put in the top tier. Mehmeti probably in the top tier of all by himself. But some combination of Mehmeti and Gozo and Hall and Shakiris has been really good. I mean, you run through the list of some of these guys, and yeah, it's a fun time, even ahead of a World Cup that's probably going to end exactly like we all think it's going to end, which is maybe in the round of 16 for the U.S. or whatever, and everybody's going to be kind of whiny about it, and that's fair enough.
The World Cup?
Winning it. Yeah. But if the U.S. doesn't win it and they lose like 3 or 4 games before that, I'm still a little optimistic for what comes next, because I think there's a really nice crop of players coming through right now.
All right. Well, we turn from that to the voice of 11,000 Lakes, a promotion.
Wow.
Jeff, you're doing a great job. You've added another 1,000 lakes. The fish are pleased. Talk to me about any new wrinkles you've seen from Minnesota, any progress you've seen from Minnesota, particularly in their game versus San Diego.
They're utilizing. So last year, when you think of like the central third, when you're looking left, center, right, like when you look at the central third of Minnesota last year, it was congested, but it was used defensively. The idea was pretty much to utilize that and then spray it over all of those bodies and hope you had strikers to run onto it, right? And that's one thing you can do when you really congest that channel. The other thing that they can do is, what they are doing right now in transition, is actually just trying to quickly kind of ricochet pinball the ball up that. And players look thrilled for it. Like, they just look so overjoyed to actually be trusted to like pass the ball and complete a pass, that they are very much buying into what Cam Knowles is looking for. I think it's also a credit to how the team is performing right now. Is like Cam Knowles, when you look at his coaching staff, looks like someone who just permanently lives on that, whose seat might be a little hot, because like his entire assistant coaching staff is former head coaches, right? It's like Josh Wolf and Danny Cruz. And who did they bring in?
Tom Sohn. Shout out Birmingham Legion.
That's right. Who was interviewed for the job ahead of the 2017 season, fun fact, before they went with Adrian Heath. So that's an interesting, kind of brain trust, but I think it's working pretty well here. And Kelvin Yeboah is certainly back in form. His quad or his hamstring recovered from that really serious injury he picked up in the Open Cup semifinal last year. He scores again. And I think that defensively they look worse without Michael Boxall, but at the same point they're starting to figure it out a little bit more and keep those 2 and 3 goal give ups to 0s and 1s, and that's what you need to do to get results in this league. This result, granted, is a lot to do with San Diego kind of stepping on rakes lately, which for whatever reason, I would stop putting rakes near Chris McVeigh and letting him like use them to stab opponents, because we're in rarefied territory, as Matt Doyle spotted. I haven't seen a guy pick up red cards in 3 consecutive appearances. Like, just to kind of go through how this is like mathematically possible, by the way, because he has played 6 games so far in the MLS season, so you would assume that he hasn't been able to do this. Well, keep in mind CONCACAF, right? So he picks up a red card against Toluca after 85 minutes in a 4-0 defeat on Wednesday the 18th, plays Salt Lake, 89th minute, 4 days later, picks up another red card. So he's suspended there. And then he returns from suspension in this game, and in the 46th minute gets sent off for a second yellow. So he's got to stop doing that. It sets San Diego certainly at a disadvantage. And San Diego is a team that we've talked about doesn't really have, like, for all their areas of depth that they do have, center back is not really one of those position groups. And so for them, they are struggling when they don't have their first choice, even if we don't necessarily say Chris McVeigh was like a snub for last year's best 11 or a contender for this year's or anything of that case. You just need consistency and continuity with that block between your goalkeeper and the center backs, and they don't have that right now. Joe, I mean, like, what else are you spotting with San Diego? Just generally, it seems like they can get a little bit of a spark going, but it's just not igniting in the same way it was last year. Is it as simple as multiple competitions and they'll figure it out over time?
I think that's a bit of it, right? I think that's probably more than a little bit of it. The red card stuff is really hurting them. I mean, it forced their games with the red card across all comps. They're just not able to keep 11 players on the field. And when Chris McVeigh gets the second yellow against Minnesota, it makes their life coming back into that game so much harder. The other thing that I spotted, actually, I'll give credit to Ben Wright, who really spotted this in the backfield recap that we did over the weekend. He pointed out just how passive the San Diego, really whole team, but especially the front line and occasionally the midfield, was on second ball situations against Minnesota, and that just made life too easy for Minnesota United. It gave them too much territory. It allowed them to do the stuff that they do best, which is then cross the ball into the box and use those physical advantages. San Diego last year, what made them so good, or a portion of what made them so good, but a really important one, was how bought in and aggressive defensively they were all over the field. Even early in the season, Anders Dreyer, their best player, was doing an insane amount of ground coverage, and he was fully bought in. I don't think he necessarily looks less bought in, but maybe it is just that early season exhaustion where their year started earlier than everybody else. I don't know if there's something to that, or maybe there just needs to be a little bit of a refresh in the messaging from Mikey Varas and a buy-in from the group. But they've been way too gappy defensively this year, way too gappy. And right now, their place in the Western Conference table reflects those problems.
How are we feeling about LAFC after this weekend's performance, in which they leave it late? They challenge Portland late, but ultimately give Portland a necessary victory, give Phil Neville a bit of a reprieve. But they do so, LAFC, without Son Heung-min, who does not travel for this game. Are we feeling okay about this loss, given that fact, given some of the depth they do have? Geoff?
I think so, because I think that another way you can spin it is they rotated out. Lloris and Sergi Palencia also didn't dress for this game. So that's like three surefire starters who are veterans who are really grateful to finally get some time off after being started like twice a week all season to date. And they still hung in with a team that expects to be in the play-in game at a minimum and seventh in the West at, a most optimistic of realistic outcomes, right? Like, that's a pretty good sign of where your depth is, even if the depth looked incredibly rusty. Now, the other thing is the depth looks young, and that's exciting. I think that you can finally see Jude Terry scores, an incredible first MLS goal of his career, curls it around the far post, and that's going to help if you're able to actually activate that academy more. That's something that's always been kind of waiting in the background. Is LFC going to be a team that can pull from LA's youth talent better than the Galaxy has, and can they utilize it? And I think that now maybe you're starting to see a little bit more of that. You also have a change in goalkeeper. Cabral Carter. It's one of those things where it's like
and he came on after Thomas Asal left the game injured. I mean, yeah,
that's right.
Full rotation for LAFC.
That's right. So Cabral Carter comes in and does pretty well off the bench, right? And then that's about as difficult of a role as you can look at for a goalkeeper to make your MLS debut, is to come in off the bench and come in like completely cold, and generally holds his own, gives up 2 goals. So unfortunately, like, the loss is going to be accredited to him, so to speak, if you're using like baseball logic. But I don't know. I think I looked at it, and the game model under Marc Dos Santos looked really clear. Still, I think that players still understood their roles. They certainly put in a ton of shots. I think they outshot. They might have doubled Portland's shots across the whole game, something like 18-10, 19-10, something like that. So they're getting their looks. They weren't as accurate. You would maybe expect that when they don't have most of their starters. I think that they'll be okay, and they certainly will be better off for having rested those players in this game.
Also, shout out Portland. They needed some good vibes. They needed to win. I think Velda was good in this game. He little brother Jude Terry a little bit, which was fun. And Terry was sort of the story in some ways, because that goal was one of the goals of the season. Mm-hmm. And fun to see LAFC, as you were talking about, Geoff, a little bit, bringing somebody through, which is refreshing. That hasn't really happened. Portland needed something, and this was probably the closest we've seen to a Portland Timbers first choice group all season long, where you have Bassett and Caicedo in the double pivot. You have DaCosta as the 10, you have Anthony and Velda as the wingers, and you have Moore up top. There's a lot to like about some of that stuff. If you're a Timbers fan, we differ, and we've argued about this in the Discord a little bit, Timbers fans and I and some others, about like exactly how those players should be rated and what the best version of this team would look like. But even so, I am sympathetic. I think I've used that word a lot today, but when we're talking about managers and them being on the hot seat, I think it is a reasonable one to use. I'm sympathetic to Phil Neville that this is the first time that he's seen that group together, and it's still not even fully first choice, because they're still a little light in the back line right now. So I can imagine it was a very, very helpful moment for Portland to have a little bit of positivity, and a game where they were the better team. Like, they were straight up the better team against LAFC. that was LAFC's B team, so there's only so much that we can take from that. But I think in terms of vibes and in terms of getting some reps together with the Portland players that matter most, it was a good weekend for the Timbers.
One last player to highlight while we're just naming a bunch of young players who are breaking through this year. The assist on Jude Terry's goal, because that's going to get overlooked because the tape is just him curling the ball. You don't really need to see the rest of it to really enjoy and appreciate that goal. The assist comes from another academy player who comes through and is in his second game. That's Matt Evans, a midfielder who debuted for Guatemala as well. Full senior national team this year. So another young player who's on the rise, and also that sort of symbiotic relationship between MLS and CONCACAF that historically has generally led to some good, entertaining national team players as well. So nice to see that proud tradition continue.
Joe, noted assist lover, you hyped about that one?
Nope.
All right. Then follow-up question. Would you rather have Jude Terry as a name or Cabral Carter as a name?
Oh, Cabral Carter, come on.
Right?
That is so
Pretty
much
solid.
cooler. So much cooler.
We need to get him a Wikipedia page. He does not have one yet. He is 21 years old. It feels like he should have one, and maybe Jude Terry should not. But here we are. We'll see how that changes for LAFC. For now, I thank you both for all of your efforts today, including talking out some coaching changes and trying to make sense of the situation in Montreal, such as it is. Geoff Ruder, voice of 10,999 likes. One was dissatisfied, but we appreciate all of your endeavors other than that one like.
Yeah, VAR caught that one. We were just getting a little overeager and trying to hit our quotas early, but we'll get there by next episode. I have no doubt.
And I'm trying to find another city in Arizona to make a joke about, but I cannot. Joe Lowry, thank you for being the voice of Phoenix and Scottsdale.
That's a city. Well done, Taylor.
There it
Good job.
is.
This is fun. Thanks, man.
Listeners, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for listening to my clumsy geography jokes, such as they are. We greatly appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.